all I've done today is eat cereal and watch BoJack Horseman. So now I'm gonna record something cause I'm kinda bored and I gotta kill some time before I go out tonight and get really fucking drunk. Good morning, metalheads of the internet. Hope you enjoyed my impromptu little song, but more importantly, welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about a brand new studio album from American black folk metal band Fall of Rauros, entitled Key to a Vanishing Future. By this point in 2022, the idea of an American black metal band fooling around with traditional American folk music and influences should not be a new phenomenon. This should not be an especially difficult idea or concept to process and swallow. Agalloch, Panopticon, Wolves in the Throne Room, Obsidian Tongue, Wayfarer, the list goes on, folks. Remarkably, though, as similar as all these bands are in a lot of ways, none of them are playing the same exact type of music. Like, yes, it's all black metal, American folk fusion stuff, but it's not the same. They're all pulling their own unique influences from different areas, often from their own unique settings and environments. For instance, Panopticon is heavily inspired by the backdrop of the Appalachian Mountains, by bluegrass, by classic Americana, whereas Wayfarer is heavily inspired by the Wild West, by the Grand Canyons of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. And the same can be said for Falls of Rauros. I mean, sure, the things that normally inspire black metal are definitely here. I mean, for God's sakes, their name is taken from a location in the Lord of the fucking Rings, but these guys are also heavily inspired by traditional American folk singers and songwriters and by their native city of Portland, Maine and the surrounding area. They've made a name for themselves as being a very dependable, as being a very consistent band within the realms of the American folk metal, black metal fusion scene. They've yet to release anything, in my opinion, on par with something like, say, The Mantle from Agalloch or Kentucky from Panopticon, but they certainly try their fucking best, and they're certainly looking to do exactly that with this brand new studio album, which they've labeled as being their heaviest, their most progressive, their most ambitious, their most emotionally poignant. In an article on BrooklynVegan.com, Falls of Rauros admits to having toned down the folk influences on this record ever so slightly to make some room for some new ideas from the realms of death metal and progressive rock, specifically citing inspiration from the likes of Death, Immolation, King Crimson, Pink Floyd, and Radiohead. I think it's worth noting as well that Fall of Rauros began work on this album near the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, and it has had an insurmountable, inarguable impact on the production of this record, on the very organic, natural sound of this record, and on some of the themes and ideas expressed throughout it. I do not, for instance, think it's a coincidence that an album recorded in such remarkable, almost dystopian times is called Key to a Vanishing Future. Just throwing that out there. The end result being what I would happily call Fall of Rauros' most engaging and unique record to date, and perhaps one of the best black metal records of 2022 so far. You've got Survival Poem, for instance, which is a very gloomy, kind of melodic, atmospheric black metal rager with mournful, melancholic soundscapes and guitar leads and roaring vocals. It's a pretty intimate track with a lot of different segments working in unison to create one really unique, cinematic kind of atmosphere. Like, for instance, in the very beginning, you've got this very minimalistic and warm and tender kind of acoustic folksy guitar part, and then you've got some like searing kind of classic second wave black metal, very cold, very bitter, very grim. It's the equivalent to like a cold wave hitting the shore. It just kind of shocks you and throws you off your game. You've also got some quieter sections which are then emboldened by some ripping, thunderous twin guitar harmonies and leads, almost ripped out of like a heavy metal record. Like, I get a lot of Spirit Adrift influence
influence here, weirdly enough. But maybe like Spirit Adrift after listening to like a bunch of Wolves in the Throne Room. I don't know. I do know it's pretty fantastic, and the track closes out on a really powerful emotional climax. The progressive rock influence is definitely very much felt on this track. Same goes for Known World Narrows. The opening of this in particular weirdly feels like something I might hear on a Mastodon record. Like something about there's very smooth and soothing guitar licks and melodies, and that very rustic, natural production reminds me a lot of Crack the Sky. At the same time, though, I feel like some of the more extreme influences from black and death metal are at their most prevalent here. There are a lot of venomous, sneering vocals, a lot of tremolo riffs and blast beats, and some heavier, chugging riffs that would not be out of place on a modern death metal record. You've also got Poverty Hymn, which closes out this record with some very evocative, heartfelt, melodic, atmospheric black metal. The guitar work in this track especially, I think, is some of the best on the entire album. I love every single guitar lick and melody and lead and the guitar solos. It's all great. It closes this thing out on a really dramatic and spectacular note. I also really like where the album is coming from lyrically and conceptually. Going back to that article with Brooklyn Vegan, the lyrics for each song revolve loosely around the concept of obligatory inheritance. We're born into this world without giving consent, and we're left to figure out how to navigate living in a world that doesn't live up to its promise. When you're young and everyone tells you to follow your dreams, that you can be whatever you want, that you can change the world, all of this feels entirely attainable in the naivety of early life. One generation fills the next with these ideas that are, for the majority of people, complete falsehoods. And so the keys to the future are passed from generation to generation, while the future itself continues to feel more and more uncertain. The album was written and recorded in 2020, in time in which anxiety felt like the zeitgeist. See, I fucking told you it wasn't a coincidence. I fucking told ya! The only thing about this album that doesn't work for me would be specifically how it opens. Clarity is by no stretch a bad track, but it's not quite as powerful as Poverty Hymn or Survival Poem or Daggers of Floodlight, the latter of which we haven't talked about. That track feels like climbing a fucking mountain in a snowstorm. It's just a great cut. This, by comparison, just kind of exists. It's entertaining, but it doesn't, like, explode or evolve the same way these other cuts do. And the very opening just feels like a somewhat sluggish, awkward way to start any album, let alone one with this much emotion and this much, really creative and evocative songwriting. Still, though, I do enjoy the track as a standalone piece, and I enjoy the entire album as a whole. I enjoy it a lot, and I'm tempted to go, fuck it, let's go 4 out of 5 on this bad boy. I think this is a really great record. I love how natural and organic it feels. I love how poignant it is. I love the emotional complexities of the lyrics. I love that it can be really badass when it wants to be, with raging riffs and soaring solos, and it can also be genuinely quite tender and intimate at other times. Fall of Rauros took a few chances with this record, tried some new things, took advantage of some weird circumstances, and I think it absolutely paid off. The only thing I would add is I hope that in the future the folk influences are brought further back into the mix, because I would love to hear this folk, black metal, progressive metal, fusion thing that Fall of Rauros, as far as I can tell, is pretty clearly working towards. But that is obviously a bridge that we can only cross when, and realistically, if we arrive to it. So, for now, Key to a Vanishing Future, great record, 4 out of 5, another standout record for black metal in 2022. Definitely check this bad boy out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.